How did you get involved with the Black Panther Party? And in what capacity did you work with them?
Well, I lived on the west side of Chicago, at Congress and Weston. I lived at a church there and worked a lot in what was then called Rockwell Projects, and they're not even there anymore. Of course, ran into the Panthers because there was a point where I looked in the neighborhood and nobody in the neighborhood was doing more for the community than the Panthers. Not a church, not an organization, the Panthers. They were doing tutoring, they were doing the breakfast program. They were the community organizers of the neighborhood. And so I wanted to connect with them. So one of the ways I connected with them was picking up bread from a local store for their breakfast program and dropping that off at the Panther headquarters. And then there was a point where Chairman Fred came to me and said, "Hey, do you know a place that we can meet?" Because the place where they were was being putting them out because there was so much pressure from the government and coming after them. So I talked to the pastor of the church where I was interning at, and he said, "Fine." So they began to meet there at that church, and I would listen to the meetings from outside the room, and I realized, I mean, I was gone to lectures and studied under Saldinsky and some of the other great community organizers. Fred Hampton was a genius in community organizing. And I'd say the greatest community organizing skills I learned was from listening to him and watching him. You know, I learned from him. I, you know, was a student of his teachings, and his community organizing became the impetus for community organizing that I try to do today, and service of community.
What made him a genius at community organizing?
His organizing, the way he could connect people and empower people and strategize. He had a brilliant mind of strategy and organizing. And that's the reason he became such a threat. Because people, you know, much like Farrakhan today, Farrakhan comes to United Center and fills it up. 75% of the people in that building are not Muslims. They're just people that come to hear this brilliance of this man and his words. Same thing with Chairman Fred. You know, most of the community around there were not part of the Black Panthers, but they had ultimate respect for his words, what he stood for, and what he did in the community. So I mean, I think he was a great organizer, a great strategist, and a great servant.
What's the most important lesson that you learned from Chairman Hampton?
Organizing and strategy, that you just didn't do things, you had a purpose, you had a strategy, you had a organizational plan for it. I think people like him are some of the most dangerous people in the world, because they don't just have an emotional outburst, they have a plan and a strategy. You know, when you look at that day, that was what was so powerful about that day. I mean, look at, you know, they were all very different. You know, you had King, you had Stokely Carmichael, you had Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, you had the Black Panthers, you had all these different groups who had all different strategies, but they had a common purpose. And they didn't let that common purpose divide them from one another. I remember one time after Stokely had said a lot of negative things about Dr. King, and he was an Uncle Tom, and he's being used, and all this stuff, and negative stuff. And a reporter come up to Dr. King the next day and said, "Well, what do you think about Stokely? He told you and Uncle Tom, and Dr. King said, "He's my brother. He's my brother." And because we have different lanes, but we're on the same highway, going to the same place. And I think if we could only learn that today, that, you know, whether it's the Nation of Islam, or whether it's Judaism, or whether it's Christianity, or whether it's whatever, if we can have differences, But let's keep the same target. All the holy books, the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, all those holy books have common foundational beliefs. Respect for human beings, love for one another, the fight for justice. So why can't we come together and join on the things that we all say we believe in, instead of use the differences of distraction to not do what we're called to do?